So good afternoon everyone. It's great to welcome you to this webinar entitled Mediation and Collaboration in the Finance Sector Impacting the Bottom Line. My name is Owen Bubbers. I'm Managing Director of the TCM Group. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for making the time to be here. I really hope this session is useful for you. So keen to run through in a few moments just a little bit how the webinar is going to work and some of the content, what we're looking to cover. Before that, let me just introduce TCM if you haven't come across us before. So TCM was set up in 2001 and we're a consultancy designed to empower people and organisations to adopt new approaches to dispute and complaints resolution. We are passionate about protecting relationships while securing lasting, sustainable outcomes. And we work very much in partnership with our customers. We care about the values of their organisation, systems, the processes, the behaviours, which are going to bring about cooperative, collaborative problem solving, open dialogue, and stakeholder engagement. So we set up in 2001 by our Chief Executive, David Liddell. We do a whole range of different services that we offer. Everything from mediating tough, complex conflict cases with people in the room to team facilitation. We've also helped set up over 300 internal mediation schemes across the UK, across the public and the private sector. I'm keen to share some more examples of those a bit later on. And our work record is very good. As market-leading mediators, our own fair mediation model has helped to resolve 9 out of 10 cases referred to us for mediation. So well over 90% of the all too challenging cases that come to us end with a agreement, a resolution between the parties. That's a little bit more about our track record. More to come, but before that, a little bit more about myself. So I am the Managing Director for TCM's London office. I manage our team of trainers, mediators and consultants. Much of my time is spent working as a consultant with organisations, especially in the finance sector, on how to create more collaborative working practices and a better approach to resolving conflict. Also done a lot of work in the government sector, higher education, but of course the reason I'm doing this webinar is because of my experience and TCM's experience in the finance sector. I'll say a little bit more of that soon. I was very fortunate in 2015 to be a recipient of the Professional Mediators Association's Mediation Champion Award of the Year. I was honoured and delighted, and that's a fantastic organisation that represents mediators across the UK and indeed globally. So a little bit more about myself. I'm also joined by our marketing manager, Lily Fulton, who does fantastic work with us, and some of you will no doubt be aware of the great marketing and communications that she puts out there on behalf of TCM. Welcome, Lily.
Thank you.
So let's get straight down to business. So you'll see there on the screen just an example of some of the clients that we have worked with in recent years from the finance sector. HSBC, Lloyds Banking Group, BNY Mellon, Deutsche Bank, and even, yes, HM Revenue and Customs. So let me try and shape where this has come from, this webinar. Well, over the last several years, we have worked in depth with the finance sector. We've really had an impact and worked with a lot of different organisations to resolve some really complex challenges. And we've identified that whilst there's real progress, that organisations in this sector are hungry to adopt new and innovative ways of working more effectively at a time of unprecedented and ongoing change. So we'll talk about HSBC. We've been setting up a pilot scheme for them as a mediation pilot scheme. Indeed, Lloyds Banking Group has done phenomenal work on revolutionising their approach to managing conflict in terms of policies and training and procedures, which we'll cover later on. So these are all examples of best practice. So a lot of great work going on at the moment, but as always, there is more to be done, and we believe there's never been a better time. So this webinar is designed to showcase that, some of the challenges, but some of the opportunities and benefits. And of course, it's very important that we at TCM are quality assured. So a few examples of that: we are accredited by Customer First, with the Institute of Leadership and Management, the Open College Network. We were Consultancy of the Year finalist with the Personnel Today Awards in 2015, and a whole range of other quality assurance accolades to our name. That gives a little sense of where we're coming from, the foundations of quality and success that we have. So specifically, what's our webinar designed to do? So I thought long and carefully about this, and for me there are 5 key areas. 1, I want to identify the key challenges facing the finance sector. 2, I want to assess the causes and the costs of workplace conflict and traditional responses to conflict. 3, I will provide an explanation of mediation. What is it? How does it work? Why does it work? And when does it work best? It can mean all manner of different things, so we want to identify that clearly. 4, I'm going to demonstrate the benefits of mediation, in particular to the bottom line. This is about the people, the employees, but let's be clear, there's a very strong commercial argument for mediation, and it's about the bottom line. And 5, I want to provide you with some practical tips and guidance for introducing mediation. So you know what, we've got an ambitious program, we're going to keep things moving. I'm very happy to provide more information after this webinar. Okay. So a few bit of housekeeping, good to knows. We're running our session till about 1:30. My hope is we'll have a brief amount of time at the end for any questions if we have time. Do please feel free to tweet us at the TCM group, get that conversation going. Following this webinar, if you would like more information, then TCM would be delighted to offer a free on-site consultation to continue that conversation with you. Also, we are going to have an opportunity, as I mentioned, for questions. There will be perhaps a couple of polls to see how we get on. And above all, please don't be shy. Don't be shy. Ask questions. That's often where the best learning is. Okay, so let's move on. What are the key challenges facing the finance sector? Well, in addition over the last couple of years to really asking our clients and identifying these challenges, I've made it my business to really seize every opportunity at conferences and networking events to grill people, senior thinkers and stakeholders in this sector on what keeps them up at night. What do they think are the key challenges? And these are some of them. And this is backed up by Accenture's own research just done last year. And I think there's 5 main areas that people are telling me about. 1, the need to strengthen resilience in the workforce in the face of constant change. 2, a changing regulatory environment. And that's not set to stop anytime soon from all that we can see. 3, reducing the cost base. 4, effective leaders and managers who manage effectively. And 5, attracting and retaining the next generation of the workforce. So let's start with the challenge. And at this point I'm going to bring in Lloyds Banking Group. We work very closely with Lloyds for a number of years, and they have won many awards. They're at the cutting edge of innovation in this area. Now, when we started working with Lloyds, I think it's fair to say they had certain agenda items that were really important. They wanted to adapt their processes. They wanted to reduce the number of grievances. And they wanted to make it easier to resolve issues and conflict issues in a timely and proactive way, and also a cost-effective way. And in the years we've been working with them, as I said, Lloyds have revolutionised their whole approach to policy making, systems, training and support. And we'll come on to that a little bit more later on. But let's start with existing dispute resolution systems. And this probably won't come as a surprise to anyone. And for us at TCM, this is where we've been starting from. There's change, there's a lot more to do. For us, it's often reactive. It's after the horse has bolted that we get involved, HR gets involved. They tend to be inherently adversarial, a win-lose position. I'm right, you're wrong, or have my day in court, my pound of flesh. Out of a sense of due care, organisations inadvertently sometimes ask and request that parties stay apart, so therefore polarising them even further and making it harder for them to come together. In my experience as a consultant and TCM experience, it rarely identifies the root cause of conflict. We stay focused on the surface level positions that the parties have rather than getting under the skin to what the real needs and drivers are. And for us, as I said before just now, individual and business needs are ignored. It is very ineffective, very cost ineffective. It is very timely, it's stressful, it's intensive. If you want to have an activity that soaks up time and resources, then a formal grievance process will do just that. Now they have their place, but we argue they should be at the end of the process, not at the beginning. They also impede creativity, and I think that they create a blame, a grievance, entitlement, and a litigation culture. All this at a time where our organisations are under more pressure than ever before to seize results, to do more with less, working in more competitive markets. For us here at TCM and many of our clients, it's a no-brainer, to be absolutely honest with you. And maybe you're familiar with these phrases from people that you work with, parties in conflict. It's your fault, you're a bully, I don't trust you, I'm right, you're wrong. And we know this is not just about the individuals, no. As David McLeod, co-chair of Engage for Success, says, a breakdown in trust is the antithesis of employee engagement. Everything is built on trust when it comes to human beings. Without trust, without communication, there can be no positive relationship. And a workforce, an organisation, as we know, is dependent on the quality of its internal relationships and external relationships. And just to set the scene a bit more broadly in terms of the UK economy, one few things I'd like you to bear in mind. According to recent ONS data, the UK has one of the lowest productivity levels out of all the G7 nations. In terms of employee engagement for industrial nations, we're ranked 9th out of 12. According to CEDA and the CBI, unresolved conflict costs the UK economy a staggering £33 billion a year. Okay? And the people behind Myers-Briggs, they estimate that 85% of employees deal with conflict on some level. And we know, for example, according to CIPD research, to add to that, that the average single employment tribunal case can take from anywhere from 19 days of management time. So there's a lot of hidden costs associated to this. And what's the result? Well, the result is that people go off on long-term sick, and it costs the organisation so much in hidden costs as well as visible costs. Not just about the employment tribunal, the time off for sickness absence, putting more pressure on teams, the list goes on and on and on. And yet the vast majority of organisations that I work with in the finance sector still struggle to assess just how much conflict costs them. It's a bit of a black hole, and I don't understand why that's the case. I don't think it's necessary or helpful. So let's think about moving forward. Peter Cheese, CEO of CIPD, said the HR profession is facing a paradigm shift in terms of how we think about business. We are now moving past command and control and process-centric models that are bound by rules and policies. We are already in a time where collaboration, moving quickly, remote working, flexible working, all these things are here and they're here to stay. And that means that we have to become more flexible and responsive and proactive in dealing with conflict. And that's where TCM comes in. That's what we've been doing for 16 years. So our resolution policies are designed to transform those command and control processes, and they're designed to deliver empathy instead of blame, innovation instead of dogma, dialogue instead of mistrust. So that's the starting point for why we believe collaboration and mediation is the way forward for any organisation, and it's a commercial imperative. So let's start with actually, what is mediation? I remember when I was in my last company and I told some bosses that I was going to be a mediator, and they said, meditation, I always knew you'd be good at that, Owen. Well, it's the same thing in a lot of organisations. It's an umbrella term. What does it mean? So let's figure out what it actually means together. So David Little, our chief exec, coined this definition. Let me share that with you. Mediation is a non-adversarial way of resolving situations. It's not just a set of skills. It is a framework and a mindset. Now, you as the mediator, you're neutral. You're going to help your parties come together openly and honestly. And you're going to endeavour to help them find a win-win outcome. It's not about blame. It's about sitting down together. And remember that if the parties are able to reach that agreement, and remember at TCM, our agreement rate is well over 93% of cases. And those are often the cases that organisations have come to us with as a last resort. 93% of cases where apparently there was no hope. You as the mediator are not there to judge, and it's voluntary and confidential. This is absolutely critical. And what's the UK economy? What's that saying about mediation? Well, a lot has happened since the Gibbons Review in 2007. The ACAS code has led to great use of mediation. There is an absolute awareness that mediation is the best practice approach, not only in the legal field, in HR, in learning development, C-suite level. Employment law reforms are becoming increasingly mediation friendly. And if anyone's been involved with an employment tribunal, you will know there's a very good chance when you go along that that judge will ask you, have you taken part, have you initiated a mediation process? Okay, so we are very confident saying that we're on the right side of history and this is not going anywhere. The question is, how can your organisation position itself most effectively for the time to come? So what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is just take you through a little bit around what mediation actually looks like in practice, because it feels a bit mysterious if you hear this word used but you never actually see it happen because it's done privately. So let me sort of shine the spotlight on that before I start addressing how the specific challenges facing the finance sector can be supported through mediation and collaborative working practices. Let me set that out for you. And the first thing to say is we need to understand what drives conflict. A whole range of things. But fundamentally, it's based on loss or the fear of loss, need, the unmet need, and the fear of losing whatever it is that you do need. It might be security, it might be job security, it might be feeling valued by your line manager, it might be having a sense of progression in the workforce. Any number of reasons. When you lose something or fear that, you inevitably produce a psychological, emotional response. And if we don't find a way to resolve it quickly, well, guess what happens? Unsurprisingly, that goes from being an inner response to an external response. Actions, interactions, reactions. And that can quickly become a destructive behavior. Maybe you stop replying to someone's emails. Maybe you don't engage with someone. Maybe you CC in colleagues who have no business in a particular issue, thus bringing about embarrassment for that person. And in our experience as mediators, that just reinforces the unmet need, and we get into a vicious cycle. So with that said, let's have a look at what happens in a mediation process. Now, unlike an investigation, which we know can take months, mediations between two parties are usually resolved in one day. If we break that day into two, this is what would happen in a typical mediation process. We split the day in two. The morning, our mediator is going to sit down and meet with both parties individually. The first meeting is all about trying to understand, what's brought them here, what's been the impact on them, professionally and personally, and what are their needs and goals. It's time for the mediator to listen, to understand, to build rapport, give that party space and time to think through what they need. The second meeting, a little bit shorter, is all about helping that party to clarify what they want to say at the start of the joint meeting. And I've been in conflicts involving mediations that have gone for 9-10 years, and yet people have not sat down and talked. I did a mediation before Christmas involving two professionals who hadn't laid eyes on each other in 2 years. 2 years. So it felt a scary process and to sit down. But they clarified what they wanted to say in that morning meeting. And then after lunch, as you can see from the bottom picture there, our colleagues sat down together. They sat down. It was difficult. It was challenging. It was tiring. But they set out what they needed from the day, what had been the impact of the situation on them, why it mattered to them. And they had a frank and honest conversation. And that may involve some strong emotions. That may involve some venting. That may involve some antagonism. We don't pretend that's not there. But at the end of the day, the goal is that they will leave that room having developed a written action plan governing their relationship as it goes forward. And you know what? If you have overseen or led a grievance process or whether being on the receiving end of one, you know that unless someone is leaving the organisation, which is quite rare, the reality is that Monday morning, 9 o'clock, those two people still have to come together. And I'd argue that relationship is even more strained than it was before, whereas mediation is focused on addressing the underlying needs that they have as professionals, as human beings. And for us, that's how we get to 93% plus on reaching agreements in these mediation cases. It's not by skimming over the surface. So it needs a bit of time, it needs expertise, it needs safe facilitation. But the results are crystal clear. So let's have a look at some of the benefits. First of all, let's look for people, the human beings, all of us. What can we benefit from mediation? Well, there's a lot here. I'll just say a couple. It creates a safe space. We know in our organisations in the finance sector, people are under more pressure. It's more busyness. People doing more for less. Long hours. This creates a rare safe space where you can share those vulnerabilities, where you're not sure what to do, where you feel stuck. It produces empathy, and we know that empathy is the grease that makes the wheels go round in any positive relationship. It allows strong feelings to be aired. A colleague of mine once said, you can't logic someone into feeling better, and maybe they just need to vent. And once it's out, they can then start to move on. Helps identify root causes, promote self-understanding, helps develop resilience within the relationship, as well as specific smart actions they're going to sign up to together. And we know that this ties into everything from increased productivity for staff, better team building. It's a creative way of building better processes and doing business better. We know it improves customer service. So on any number of levels or strategies that you will no doubt be wrestling with, conflict resolution, how it's resolved, feeds into all of them. What about the business benefits? Well, let's build on what I just said. We know that there's going to be less time spent by management and HR. I remember seeing a survey recently saying that 20% of a manager's time, a frontline manager's time, is spent resolving conflict. That's a lot of time. That's 1 day in 5. The weeks and months for preparing, handling grievances, the time it takes to investigate, carry out an investigation, the legal costs, costs of employment tribunal, time off for absence and sickness. There's a services company I'm working with at the moment in the city, and I was given a statistic that 33% of staff who put in a grievance will also go off sick, medium term, long term. Now that's about average, I think, and that's pretty high, and I think pretty shocking and wildly inefficient. That's not to mention all the time it takes to recruit new staff, the loss of institutional memory and skills. But what it will lead to is greater productivity, goodwill, confidence in managerial leadership, improved well-being and resilience, cohesion, and ultimately, as I mentioned before, the customer experience, because that's why we're doing what we're doing, ultimately, is to support and enrich our customers. So there are some general benefits, and now we're going to move on to looking at what are some of the key challenges facing the sector. So let's really drill down. Now, let's go back. Let's take that first challenge, which is strengthening resilience in the workforce, and let's come on to that, as well as uncertain regulatory environment. Now, there's a lot of good research out there. I'm drawing from the CIPD. You'll see the source below. Feel free to please pursue that, check it out. And first of all, I want to say, change is the new normal. That's where we're at, and that's not changing. We've got a very uncertain regulatory environment, and that can produce a lot of stress and uncertainty, and one of the core needs we all have as human beings is a need for stability and certainty in some way. Now, nearly a third of organisations have reported an increase in stress-related absence over the past year. 2/5 have reported a rise in reported mental health problems. Now, finance sector, of course, we know there is a culture of long working hours, and we're seeing that that is being added to even more. And also, we know the workload is reportedly the most common cause of stress-related absence, and long working hours are also somewhat associated with increases in reported mental health problems. Now, on the face of it, that seems quite clear. There's nothing surprising about that. It sounds logical. And yet, our culture is focusing on longer hours, doing more for less, and that has consequences. So the question is, how as organisations do we respond to that? And you know what? What's crystal clear to me as a consultant is that organisations in the finance sector are more committed than ever to improving the well-being of their staff. CEOs are talking about it. HR directors are really focusing on their strategy for increased well-being. Is it mindfulness? Is it yoga? Is it Pilates? My point is these trends are still ongoing in spite of that greater organisational awareness of well-being. So we've got a challenge there. So the answer is then, why mediation, collaboration? What point does that have to make? How can it help? Well, first of all, the old adage, we can't control the waves, but we can choose how to ride them. Anyone interested in mindfulness would know that mere mindfulness is about giving people greater opportunity and clarity to decide what they want to do about a situation. They can't control the input, but they control the output and their own response. It's the same thing here. Mediation collaboration, above all, is focused on a proactive approach. Problems are identified early by open communications. For example, having a strong manager-direct report relationship where you're discussing issues as they come up rather than letting them fester. 2, as I mentioned before, these tackle head-on the underlying or hidden needs that often get pushed to the side because they're awkward, we don't understand them ourselves, we're not sure how to deal with them. Mediation is designed to get under the skin of all that. Also, this is an opportunity for employers to demonstrate that employees are valued and supported. This is becoming ever more important as we move into a more candidate-driven environment, where organisations are having to fight over employees and candidates with the skills that they need. So feeling valued and supported are 2 key needs. I can tell you that as a mediator for nothing. This is an example to demonstrate that. And of course, the best form of resolution can be identified if we get to the challenge early. We have choices, but once we let it fester, it's very rare it fixes itself. And when it does often explode, the proverbial glass just smashes, well then it's a lot harder to put it back together again. 2, Let's have a look at reducing the cost base. Now, in all the meetings I have with our clients, this obviously comes up again and again and again, and is no doubt hugely on the agenda. So what are some of the key points? Well, one, obviously we're seeing a continuing fallout from a global recession. That ripple effect is still very much there. We know there is subdued growth in the global economy overall. Recent political events have elevated market volatility as well as the broader economic volatility. Of course, Brexit is driving this huge amount of uncertainty and change, and we will not know the outcome for a long time to come. There's also record low interest rates, and of course there's a potential for an increase in protectionist measures from the incoming Trump administration and also globally. So that's absolutely one to watch. And what are the consequences? Well, for a start, global banks are selling off capital-intensive assets. There are significant job layoffs. There are many closures of branches. Just one example. So we know a few years ago, Lloyds Banking Group unveiled a plan to remove £1 billion a year from its cost base by the end of 2017, including by axing 9,000 roles, shutting 200 branches. Well, as of last year, Lloyds is now accelerating that by a year. So they're targeting an extra 20% in savings by the end of 2017, which will take its annualized cost reductions to about 1.2 billion. Now that's a lot. That's a big challenge. I know that they're not alone. It's just one example. So again, we come back to how can mediation and collaboration support the bottom line? Well, to do that, I want to show you a video. And the video features Sue Higson from Lloyds Banking Group. Now, Sue is someone we've worked very closely with at Lloyds. She is the lead HR advisor and was a key player in all the work that's been ongoing to revitalise their approach to resolution. And I'm going to play the video. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long. But what I really want to focus on in the middle of the video is she talks about the financial impact of mediation and collaboration. So please do watch out for that. Here we go. This is Sue having the floor.
So we've been working with TCN for a little over 4 years now, developing our mediation strategy, which is now what we term to be issue resolution. So what we've done is work really hard with David and the team to develop that professional mediation expertise within the organisation, and that expertise sits in my team. And we've used that expertise to make tangible differences in terms of the way we manage conflicts in the organisation. So what that's helped us to do is think very differently about resolving issues informally rather than rely on formal processes to help us to do that. Certainly in terms of results, we've seen our harassment numbers pretty much halve in the time that we've been doing what we've been doing from an issue resolution perspective. Our grievance numbers are down. We are still working really hard to create an issue resolution policy framework rather than have that reliance on grievance as a policy. If I look at what we've saved the organisation from the financial perspective, when we assess the cost and time of mediation versus formal grievance and harassment, you know, that is in the millions already. And the case is compelling for us to continue on the journey. We've still lots to do, but I think we've come quite some way. When you look at having a grievance policy in comparison to issue resolution, what you've got invariably is formal, protracted processes that ultimately don't do anything to restore working relationships, whereas issue resolution is absolutely about doing that and making sure that you can do that bit for engaging with the workforce. Mediation, for me, absolutely recommend that to other companies because that's what restores relationships. That's what allows companies to prosper.
I appreciate that. So I hope you took note there in terms of, and this was filmed a few months ago now, the impact, financial impact for Lloyds running to millions of pounds and the time saved in a relatively short period of time. So I hope that speaks for itself. Now moving on, I'm going to come on to how you can introduce mediation into the organisation. But before we do that, let's carry on looking at the key challenges. I want to come on to effective managers and leaders. Now managers do heroic work. Not only do they have to balance their own role, but they also have to manage others. And as many people will say, there's nothing harder than managing human beings. And I've noticed we've had an assumption in our world of work for so long that if someone is technically gifted at doing a job, well, that must mean they're automatically good at managing the people who do that job. And of course, this isn't necessarily true. We know that management is an art, it is a science, and there is a defined skill set involved. So technical ability still leads the pack. Now, there's some organisations offering fantastic training and development for aspiring and current leaders, but still very much you're recruiting on the basis of technical skill set. So we shouldn't assume that if you put someone in that role, they will know what to do. Because human beings, as we established, are unpredictable and complex. And there's also, from the meetings that I have with clients, prospective clients, there's a ready concern from senior stakeholders that they believe that the majority of managers who they're involved with have the tools to do the job, especially when it comes to rebuilding a high-performing team and resolving conflict. That's a concern I hear a lot from people I speak to. I think it's worth mentioning. I still think there's a tendency for a lack of relevant training support. We still say, right, off you go, Joe Bloggs, off you go, good luck. We expect great things from you. And that's a tall order, I think. And we also know, in particular, especially in a target-driven, finance-based organisation, that often interpersonal relationship issues can manifest themselves as performance management conflicts. So at this point, I'm going to draw on another recent example for us, and that's HSBC. Now, last year, we were asked to set up a pilot scheme with HSBC, to a pilot mediation scheme for their UK business on the issue of performance management. And I'm sure mirroring many other finance organisations, often issues would come up between manager and direct report. Maybe we feel there's a performance issue, they're not responding appropriately, they're not taking board my feedback, I don't feel like my gifts and results are being recognised by the organisation, for example, and frequently this would manifest itself as a formal grievance. And we know once you're on that path, it is time-consuming, it is complex, and rarely gets the needs of the parties met. So what we're looking to do is help say, right, before we go down that formal path, can we sit the parties down? Can we give them that safe space to talk openly and candidly about what they actually really need? Because what we've often found is so many performance management issues may legitimately, of course, have a performance-related issue, but invariably it also involves interpersonal issues, perceptions, understandings, different value systems, lack of communication, stress, anxiety, not being clear. So that's an example of where we've worked with a huge organisation to really develop a pilot program that responds to that need there. And so far, initial results are very encouraging. And finally, let's have a look at attracting and retaining the next generation. Now, I was fortunate enough to be involved at the recent Interbank Forum that I think some of you may have been at. It was a great event and really demonstrated a desire on the parts of different organisations to share and collaborate on lots of different issues. And one of the issues that I mentioned and had traction was how do we attract and retain the next generation? Millennials. Let's focus on millennials. So what I've found in my research, and I again sourced a report from PwC, Millennials at Work 2016, I really recommend you check that out. It's a great report. Traditional banking business models are not designed to attract millennials. So be under no illusion, millennials will soon make up the majority of the UK workforce and the finance sector workforce. They already have a lot of purchasing power as customers. And they also have unique needs. And some of the mediations I'm involved with are where you have people, maybe someone who's been in the organisation for 30 years versus someone who's been there for 6 months. Different needs, different outlook, different expectations. And the smart organisations out there are already hot on the heels of working out how their business model aligns to the needs and expectations of millennials. So let's be under no doubt, millennials will leave if they do not feel they're getting what they deserve. And one might scoff at that. But the reality is, remember, we are moving into an increasingly candidate-driven market, an increasing skill shortage, not just in the UK, but globally. So unfortunately, organisations can't say, well, fine, go there. We haven't got that luxury. So we need to be realistic about this. Millennials demand proactive, frequent feedback. They don't want to be sitting there passively. They will hold their managers accountable and have high expectations. Millennials also have a clear need to understand how their role, their impact, connects with their own personal values and the organization's values. So what I'm talking about is they need to have a clear narrative of how what they do matters in the big picture. So vision is incredibly important. It's not about the transactional, functional mode of work. It's about setting out and articulating and walking the talk on the vision, because personal authenticity is also of critical importance to the millennial generation. And finally, millennials favor results. They care about results and outcomes far more than they do about process or structure. They don't really care very much about seniority, status, tenure. They care about what happens at the end of all that. And they tend to be, I think, from what I can see, I say this with respect, quite impatient at times. So, again, I come back to why is mediation, why is collaboration key when it comes to attract and retain the next generation of the workforce? Well, mediation, collaboration, they focus on win-win outcomes. We believe as practitioners that if you sit, in most cases, if you sit down with that person and you both have a willingness to give it a go to resolve whatever the situation is, most of the time you can develop a win-win outcome. I don't mean a perfect outcome. I don't mean one where you're serenely happy all the time, but a realistic, viable, robust, equitable outcome. And 93% are cases. That win rate suggests that that is viable for the vast majority of cases that come up in the workplace. Well, also that mediation, collaborative mindset, that culture makes it very much easier to identify the possible challenges early. The phrase is nipping it in the bud. If we can get to an issue but where it's still malleable, it's relatively straightforward, before it becomes about someone's belief system, their values, it will be far easier to find that outcome. Mediation also fosters an emphasis on being the critical friend. Now, I don't know about you, but my sense is it's very hard in the busy and stressful workplace to give that great feedback always, and it can be quite political and difficult to give. Well, this process is built on being the critical friend, being assertive, being clear, being constructive. What's it like to walk in that other person's shoes? How might they receive that information the best way possible? And we all need that. We all need that, and millennials expect that. And finally, whatever your collaborative approach is, whether it's focusing on the direct report, line manager relationship, it's about facilitated conversations, it's about formal, so classic mediation, all these processes and the culture, the mindset that flow from them, and all the systems and all the processes that go into it, these are founded on values of mutual respect, dialogue, empathy, sustainable resolution. And I ask the question then, who wouldn't want that in their organization? If no one else, millennials do. But I know it's not just millennials. We all expect and want to be treated with respect, empathy, understanding, value, safety. And mediation collaboration is built on those things, pure and simple. And finally, let's look at timing. Most mediations are completed in one day versus the weeks and months it can take to carry out an investigation process. So going back to the millennial issue, just remember, millennials expect results, they expect them quickly, and they won't wait indefinitely. If the timeliness is important for your organization, and I'd argue it's important for the market, it's important in terms of increasing competition, it's increasing in terms of meeting the expectations of your staff, why not take that far more cost-effective, time-effective approach before you get bogged down in a formal process? So that concludes some of the key challenges I think facing the sector at the moment, and I hope that speaks to you, and I'd love to talk to you more about it as well. There's so much more to say. But let's spend a few moments as our time draws to a close on how do we develop a mediation-friendly culture. Well, first of all, if you come to a TCM event, you'll know we talk incessantly about the triumvirate. You know, these are the kind of critical players who are necessary for introducing any kind of mediation or collaborative approach in TCM's view. One is about bringing on board HR, that critical function. It's about engaging frontline managers, because remember, they are going to signpost for you what's available to staff, what opportunities for collaboration, mediation and conflict resolution are there. And also working very closely with union representatives. We work very closely with unions, have a fantastic relationship with them through our clients. And we understand that for them, for the most part, they want to make sure their clients are represented well. And what many representatives are finding is that mediation offers new possibilities to get those needs met versus very sort of time ineffective formal processes. So think about your key stakeholders, not to mention people at board level who you want to lean on political support. So think about your key stakeholders if you want to bring in a new approach. 2, question, are you resolution ready? Now here are some of the many questions we think are necessary to be asked, and when I do a sort of straw poll at our events for new and existing clients and I say, how many of these answers can you say, yeah, we're resolution ready? I have to say, there aren't many who can put their hands up for more than a few at best. Does conflict management feature as a strategic priority in your business? Do you know what the real cost of conflict is? Do you know off the top of your head how many grievances and bullying, harassment allegations the organisation gets each year? Do we know how much just one of them costs us? Do we know the impact conflict has on our employee engagement, our satisfaction levels? Do you know how much time the average manager is spending dealing with conflict? And do we know how it impacts the customer experience? And finally, do we try and mitigate that by training our managers, our leaders to spot issues and nip it in the bud? If you can answer yes to that, you are doing very, very well, and I want to speak to you. If you haven't quite got there yet, all I can say is you are certainly not alone, and I think we have an opportunity to support your organisation. So let's think about this. What is an integrated mediation scheme? Well, here at TCM, we very much focus on the systems approach. So I know as a trainer that you can have the best team of mediators that money can buy, but if you haven't set up a viable, sustainable system, think about your values, your systems, your processes, your policies, your triaging process for cases. It's going to be very, very hard, if not impossible, to make that sustainable. So if you are someone thinking about introducing a full mediation scheme, here's a few tips and pointers. You want to develop your business case, of course. You want to take perhaps a TCM resolution audit, which is a tool designed to help you assess what the challenges are and what options might be. You need to engage your stakeholders, as we know. We're going to encourage and work with you to change your grievance policy and other policies to make them about resolution. Lloyds Banking Group have done this. Kent County Council is another example. London Borough of Hillen is another example, where we have supported them to develop a whole new policy approach, focusing on informal resolution. We're going to need to train also our key stakeholders, managers, unions, HR staff, the triumvirate. We're going to have to train them how to become mediators. We're going to have to train them how to use the toolkit of a mediator. We're going to have to train them how to best spot suitable cases for mediation so they can make an informed choice about what the best kind of resolution looks like in any given example. And of course, you're going to have an in-house team of multidisciplinary mediators. A great example for us, we work very closely with Royal Mail Group to set up their industrial relations process. I was actually involved at the tail end of that training of their team of mediators. And they found a way to create a vehicle for this mediation team. So with historical issues around industrial relations, half of this mediation team were managers, half were union representatives. And both at that time, you'd have 2 mediators per mediation, one from management, one from the union. And that became a great vehicle for fostering greater understanding and trust. You're thinking about that. And finally, I imagine you're also always on the lookout for positive PR and awards opportunities. So you want to be thinking about how you're going to communicate your exciting new resolution scheme. An example of that, Lloyds Banking Group has been the recipient of many awards with the Professional Mediators Association. They are pathfinders, if you will. So that's another key thing. And of course, you need to be able to demonstrate accountability and ROI. So measuring, evaluating, reporting is absolutely critical. And our services are designed to help you gather that data so you can make a very credible case. So very briefly, as our time comes to an end, what does that business case look like? If you've got more questions, I'd love to answer them. I'd love to send you some more information and have that conversation with you. So let's break down the business case. Here's a rough template. You need to assess what your vision objectives are, what you're trying to achieve. You need to think about what is the current context, not as I'd like it, but as it is. You need to evidence that need for change. Benchmarking data using the tools I've just laid out will be really important. Engaging your stakeholders, especially at the very senior strategic level, to have your champion there who can advocate for this scheme. You need to think about the internal factors, policies, procedures, as well as customers and suppliers for your external side. You need to have a very good project plan with key milestones for the next 3 to 5 years, because you're looking at a longer term process here that invariably is about cultural change. We know that takes time. You need to be realistic about your resource requirements. Number 10, hopefully you're going to choose to partner with the TCM group. That will of course be a hope of ours, and then you need to anticipate that return on investment. Now that clearly is just a very, very general introduction to what a business case would look like. But as I said, we've helped hundreds of organisations to develop that. So if that's on your agenda, you've got the knowledge, we'd love to connect organisations, people with organisations who are further down the road. Please let us know. I mentioned the model resolution policy once before. So Lloyds Banking Group, for example, took their grievance policy and they frankly shredded it. And they developed a resolution policy. Now this is a template we ourselves at TCM have developed. We are passionate about encouraging organisations to take this and use it. It's built on the audit model. It's ACAS compliant. And what it does in a nutshell is it enables an organisation to say, right, let's look at the situation informally. Let's try and resolve it speedily in a really constructive, collaborative way. If that doesn't work, we can move to a more formal approach. But you know what? The vast majority of cases that you're facing that may be sitting on your desk right now can be dealt with informally. The question is, the challenge is, do we have the policies in place to make sure that happens and is viable? And that's my challenge to you. Is that happening right now? So, this resolution policy, it represents a new approach to grievance and complaints resolution. It is values-based and person-centered. It's about enhanced triage of cases, creating opportunities for those conversations, positive conversations. We emphasize the mediation. Remember, mediation still remains voluntary, and rest assured it is fully ACAS compliant with the ACAS code, with additional information if you'd like to receive it. So we're coming towards the end of our time. And what I'd like to do is really, for me, I'm curious to see, has this webinar been useful? What would you take back to your workplace to help develop a culture of resolution? And what support do you need from TCM? So a few of the slides I just want to show you about while that's marinating away. Let me tell you a bit more about TCM services so you have an idea of what we can offer. So first of all, if you'd like to sign up, please drop me a message. My details will be coming up at the end. I would be delighted to set up a complimentary meeting with yourself, myself, and our Chief Executive, David Little, to see how we can help your organisation move to that more collaborative culture. We offer accredited mediation training, accredited by the Open College Network, a market-leading training course that has trained indeed thousands of people across the UK economy over the last 16 years. We actually offer, of course, our own mediation service. If you've got a particularly challenging case that you want mediated, that's what we do. That's where we're at. We've got a fantastic team of consultants. Also, we've recently launched a very exciting new product called Leaders 2020, because we've identified that as mediators, we feel we have a lot to offer in the training and development of managers and leaders within organizations. Okay? This is a modular-based program. You can take one module, you can take a whole range built on, for example, how to build a high-performing team, critical communication skills, managing discipline and absence, all from that perspective of collaboration and a mediation perspective. It's accredited by the Institute of Leadership and Management, so please do let me know. My sense is that organizations in the finance sector have a lot of training options, but whether they have training courses around confident conversations, how to manage those difficult conversations, how to use the toolkit of a mediator day to day, I'm less convinced by it. I think there's a real opportunity there. And of course, also, we're very much about setting up internal mediation schemes, and indeed have set over 300 of those over the last 15, 16 years. So I've got to say I'm very excited. I'm going to be hosting a roundtable for the finance sector in April, Thursday the 20th of April in the city, the venue to be confirmed shortly. And this event has been designed for board level members, strategic thinkers, heads of HR, LD, L&D and OD. All right? And it's designed to be an in-depth look at the challenges facing the finance sector, the sharing of best practice case studies, and evidencing the benefits of a collaborative approach to conflict resolution. So my goal is to have people around the table who are at the cutting edge of this issue. Maybe people who are further down the line, as well as organisations who are maybe just starting out, dipping their toes in the waters but want more information. Again, all about collaboration. So more information will be coming. I'd be delighted to see you there. I think it will be very useful and we'll have a lot of great information to share and some great case studies. So please do watch this space. More information to come. And just finally, let's compare and contrast grievance-related approach, a resolution-related approach. The former is adversarial, tends to be quite punitive and defensive, quite combative. It tends to be a win-lose, mutually exclusive game. Resolution, well, it's informal. It's about talking to each other. It's about listening to each other. It's about interest-based processes, being open, finding a win-win, and trying to practically resolve an issue, practically resolve it that will help people long-term. And I think there's an opportunity here. And the reality is we can look at this from the perspective of conflict resolution, which we do at TCM, of course, but this is so much more than that. These principles, these skills, these tools are absolutely critical for making a business run well and effectively in today's very competitive environment, where we need to be lean, we need to be responsive, we need to be open-minded, we need to be creative. Mediation and collaboration is designed to support all that, provides that foundation. So my top tips for taking the grief out of a grievance. This is built on 16 years of mediating literally thousands of complex cases. Think about this for today and see, I would like to see if you're modelling these behaviours today. Listen actively. Generally give someone a good listening to. They may not be expecting it, but they may well appreciate it. Be empathetic. Challenge yourself to think, am I really considering what's going on for them right now? Am I trying to walk in their shoes, even if I disagree with everything they're saying? 3, do your best not to judge, assume, or blame. We know as human beings, we are masters at assuming things, at creating narratives with imperfect information. It takes someone quite self-aware to see the assumption coming, to see that judgment on the horizon, and resist that, so they can make a more informed choice. 4, depersonalize the situation. In TCM, our media is always talking about depersonalize it. Encourage that speaker, whoever it is, to describe their observations, their feelings, their needs. You do the same. Maybe make it about the issue, not about the relationship, because the issue is far more easy to deal with than the relationship, which is all about values and identity and beliefs. And finally, let's be practical. Focus on interests and needs. Negotiate assertively. Feel free to make requests of each other, which are mutually beneficial. Because remember, beneath some very adversarial, combative positions, there's always, invariably, multiple ways to get those needs met. Maybe not perfectly, but there's always different ways to get complementary needs met. I've seen it as a mediator. I've been there in the room where apparently there's no hope in a case. And I've seen people overcome those to create lasting results. My experience tells me that is true. And that's true experience of our clients in the finance sector as well. So, I'd like to open the floor at this time if there are any questions that anyone has. Okay, are there any questions that we have? It's great to see so many folks on the webinar here. Okay, well, I tell you what we're going to do. In the dying seconds of our webinar, I'm going to put a poll out in the field, okay? And my question to you is, I'd like you to answer. Be grateful if you take 30 seconds to do this. Have you found this webinar useful? Is that a yes? Is it a no? I'd like further information. Please do let us know. I'm going to give you a very quick 30 seconds. No, I told a lie. It's going to be 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Interesting. Okay, interesting. I'll be putting those results out shortly. Okay, so thank you very, very much. So it just leaves me to say, thank you so much for joining the webinar today. I appreciate you have a lot going on, a lot of calls in your time, so I hope you found it of real benefit and interest. This media webinar will be going out on YouTube. We'll be marketing as well to our partners, our clients. And if you have any other questions, please drop me an email. owen.bubbers@thetcmgroup.com. We've worked a lot in the finance sector. Our experience and the results that we've achieved with our clients demonstrate that this has real mileage. And I'd encourage you as a final thought, at a time of unprecedented change and challenge in the world, that mediation collaboration has a real opportunity and invariably will impact your bottom line. So even if you're not fully convinced, I'd really encourage you to take a look. I believe that you cannot afford not to take a look at a collaborative working practice in mediation. And on that note, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, and we look forward to being in touch. Goodbye.